Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
I'm surprised they didn't do the pink.
Yes.
Do you know the pink guitar he's been playing
Roxy,
for about the last year?
the Roxy, yeah.
The thing that he's been playing as part of his Sob Rock album that has come out. I'm surprised they didn't do a pink version of that. But actually, you know, although I think there may be some sensible reasons why they've chosen the colours they did, they're pretty uninspiring.
They're ugly.
They are. The Dragon Fruit Red is probably the only one that feels interesting to me.
Greetings and welcome once again to the Guitar Smarts podcast. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since Paul Reed Smith Guitars released their much anticipated and highly publicised SE model of the John Mayer signature guitar, the Silver Sky. Now, being John Mayer fans, Kiran and I have been talking about this guitar for some time, and we're interested to see what the SE model would be like in comparison to the core model from the US. Safe to say, the specs of this new guitar and its apparent performance left us itching to have a good old chat about it, so that's exactly what we've done this week. To be clear, we have not yet had the chance to play either the USA core model or the SE version of these guitars, so our opinions so far are our own, based off what the guitar specs are on paper and from the comments and reviews of those who have reviewed these guitars online. We would encourage you as always to make up your own mind on what you think. Please remember that if you like what you hear and you enjoy listening to this podcast, then why not share it with a friend, tell them it's worth a listen, and follow us in your favourite podcast app so you never miss a show. Follow the links in our description to find places online where you can buy Guitar Smarts merch, you can contribute to the show, or simply leave us a review. And of course, you can find links for our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram too. So come and give us a follow and a like over there as well. Hope you enjoy this week's conversation. Let's get to it.
Kiran, how you doing, mate? You well?
I'm really good, mate. I'm looking forward to today. I think we both are looking forward to a good chat. But yeah, I'm good, mate. It is crisp and frosty outside, but equally sunny at the same time. Kids are back in school.
Yeah.
And yeah, all is good in the world.
Yeah, it's one of those beautiful winter days, isn't it, at the moment? I mean, just for the listeners' sake, today is the 14th of January? Friday the 14th? Yeah, Friday the 14th of January, recording this. And it is a beautiful, crisp winter's day. Sunny outside. It was absolutely freezing this morning. I did the school run this morning and I had to defrost the inside of the car as well as the outside of the car. It was that cold. It's like scraping inside as well. But never mind. But yeah,
it is cold.
It's good though, isn't it? It's kind of, I like days like this when it's crisp. I'll probably go out for a nice walk later on.
Yeah.
How's your week been, dude? Has it been good?
Yeah, it's been full on. It's kind of second week back to work after Christmas. So like the first week, people were still kind of in holiday mood. Some people had taken extended leave, so it was all quite quiet, and it kind of felt like I was still on holiday a bit more and just dipping into work. But today it's been fully back on with work. But you know, that's all good, and it pays the bills. But yeah, it's Other than that, pretty good, mate. I can't complain. How's things with you been? You all right?
Yeah, good. Been a good week. Nothing really much to report. It's just been another week, really. You know, been doing a bit of guitar practice this week. Been trying to write some backing tracks because I've been enjoying kind of playing along to things, because sometimes I kind of feel like in my practice I want to play along to a particular chord sequence or something, and you kind of get a loop going. And then I was thinking, well, what if I kind of, because I've got some like drum kind of loops and things that I can use. So I was using that to kind of make some tracks. And in the end, I started making some like backing tracks. So I'm trying to do a bit more of that because it's good fun. Maybe what we'll do at some point is kind of make them available to kind of Guitar Smarts listeners to download, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, just been doing that. It's been a pretty a low key week really for me, terms of, just plodding along. But it's been a big week in the guitar world, hasn't it, this week?
For some of us, for you and me, definitely, it's prompted a lot of text messages between us. I think this is gonna be definitely an episode that's interesting to people that are contemplating a purchase of a particular instrument that we're going to talk about today. But generally speaking, I think this will be of interest to people, even if you're not thinking of purchasing this, because we're going to probably debate pros and cons and all kinds of angles on this particular topic. But yeah, you alerted me to this because I had no idea. So just before Christmas, during the Christmas break, you sent me a kind of an innocuous text that just kind of made me just go, what could this be like? So do you want to tell the audience what the message was that you effectively kind of sent me?
Yeah, well, it was about the new PRS Silver Sky SE guitar, which is actually something that we discussed it a long time ago, because the rumours have been around about this guitar for, I think, the last couple of years, really.
Yeah.
And it's finally out, and there's some really interesting things about this guitar that I think are worthy of a podcast discussion. That's why we're talking about it today. So this week's discussion is we're talking about the PRS Silver Sky and the PRS Silver Sky SE. What it means, trying to understand what PRS are doing here, because this isn't like what they've done before. The Santana model and the Santana SE were about as far apart as you could get, I mean, if you buy a Santana PRS core range core guitar, I mean, you're talking £6,000-7,000.
Oh, easily. More. I think they do a kind of, they have done at least some of the American-made Santana ones that go for kind of $4,000 to $5,000, which are a little bit less ornate. Maybe don't have some of the kind of private stock finishes and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you are talking about, anywhere upwards of, $3,500-4,000, all the way up to like $6,000-7,000 for some of the really, limited run finishes of the Santana PRS.
Yeah. And the other thing is just, I mean, we were just kind of briefly talking about this before we started recording, but I've never seen so much PR around a guitar before. So much, not just PR, but kind of coordinated PR. I mean, it's not even like it's advertised a lot. It's advertised a lot, but this guitar has been put in the hands of every meaningful social media and, YouTube guitar channel prior to it being released. I mean, everyone, the guy from Music Is Win, can't remember his name, Andertons have had it, all these different people, Murray Spender, they've all had this guitar put in their hands beforehand, and they've all released videos on the release day. PRS's own PR for this has included John Mayer himself, they've got the artist's complete buy-in. In fact, not only have they got the artist's complete buy-in, but he's clearly part of the process, not just for the core guitar, but for this, Far Eastern made, more affordable, more accessible model. And then you've got other artists as part of the PR as well. So some of the videos that PRS have released involve John Mayer and people like Ariel Posen, David Ryan Harris, all these different people playing the guitar. So I've never quite seen anything like it. I mean, it's incredible, the effort that's gone into this release, which begs the question, well, how good is this guitar? Is that PR effort, equal in size to the belief PRS have in the quality of this guitar?
Oh, interesting.
Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of questions, I think, about this guitar. So many. I mean, who's it for? Who's this guitar for? Is it for people who? Don't get me wrong, I like it. I think on balance, I think it's a fantastic guitar on paper. I have issues with it, with certain things. I'm sure everyone has, but I think this is for people who can't afford the full fat version.
Yeah, but they're quite open about that.
Exactly. But I think it's also a very competitive guitar in that kind of sub £1,000 Strat style marketplace, which is, man, that's a congested area of the market. You know, the number of people that have got three single coil guitars in that kind of bolt-on neck style in that range is huge. So where does it sit in that marketplace? So, you know, there's some really interesting comments on some really interesting reviews. And I think I want to kind of, this week we're going to spend some time kind of disseminating all that information, and how I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it, because I know we don't think exactly the same on these things, but I'm interested to hear what you think. So what are your, given that you've spent some time before today kind of absorbing a lot of the information that's come out about this guitar, what are your initial thoughts?
Okay, so to kind of understand where we've got to today, we kind of need to take a little bit of a step backwards, but it touches on a few of the different things you've said already around the PR effort and you know what we're going to make of this guitar, right? So we need to go back at 2-3 years now. 2018, I think, right, was when the Silver Sky first came out, and I still remember, as I'm sure you do, the release of this guitar and the controversy surrounding it, or the polarizing discussions, right, that started to take place. And I remember being quite vehemently disgusted at the release of the PRS Silver Sky, and I'm a huge John Mayer fan, right? You know, if he puts his name on something and it's within my abilities to afford it, I'll probably go and buy it, and especially if it's like a guitar. But I haven't bought a Silver Sky yet, but only because, and this is a key point, right? Only because they are bloody difficult to get hold of in the UK at any given time point. They literally sell out the moment the shipments arrive in. And so you can get hold of them, and they are stocked in different places. But just for me to be able to go and walk into my regular guitar store and pull one down off the rack and try one hasn't happened, because they're literally coming in and going out the door, you know, to order. So the reason I was kind of a bit affronted by the release of it was because it came with a really hefty price tag, you know, £2,500 for what is effectively a bolt-on Strat, right? And we can talk, and that's kind of custom shop money. If you compare it to what it's designed on, which is a vintage Fender Strat, we're talking that's like custom shop money. But okay, this is a PRS, renowned for their build quality, renowned for their beautiful tone woods, and renowned for, you know, producing some really great guitars. So you kind of allow some kind of allowances there, and you go, well, it's John Mayer as well. It's got his name on it. He's co-designed it. Okay, it's going to come with a premium price tag. It's affordable within reason, you know. It's not completely unobtainable like some of the Murphy Lab stuff we've ranted about before. But, you know, I just thought, is this really worth it? So I'm still yet to play one and go, is it worth it? But, you know, a lot of people rave about the Silver Sky and just go, it's just a really good guitar. And you go, well, great. If it's a really good guitar and it works for you, then brilliant. But I think the Silver Sky probably surprised PRS in many ways as to how successful they were with it, and the fact that it constantly is like being sold out in guitar shops, at least here in the UK, but I dare say, you know, across the globe. I think for them that was like a wow moment. I don't think they thought they were taking a big risk with John Mayer. He's one of the top guitarists in the world, and has been for you know, the last decade or so. But they were going up against the Fender Strat. He'd parted with Fender. They basically weren't doing the usual PRS thing, which is these beautiful tone woods, beautiful tops, you know, they're kind of classic PRS designs. They're basically ripping off a Fender Strat and going, well, no, it's not. It's something different. It's not really that different, right? So I was kind of disgusted at the kind of just the kind of, I guess, not just the lack of originality around it. John Mayer, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was kind of like, really, you're not going to.
It was underwhelming at first, wasn't it? It was underwhelming. I think
it was.
so much of the difference in that guitar is in details you can't necessarily see unless you have your hands on the instrument, maybe. Yeah,
maybe so, and that is probably why those that have had their hands on it and have played one, that do own one, go, this is a really good guitar. John Mayer aside, and how you feel about him him, and probably if you've purchased one of those, you're a John Mayer fan anyway. But the guitar itself, PRS's build quality, all of that kind of stuff thrown in, people go, this is just a brilliant guitar. So let's take that as read, and let's just go, it's a brilliant guitar. And so the original discussions around, oh my God, they've just made a Strat but put PRS headstock on it, I think have probably moved on because people have recognised it's a really lovely guitar that sounds great, plays great, and is a cool guitar. And they did some really cool finishes with it, some beautiful finishes. The original finishes were all based on, I think, the kind of Tesla car colours, but then they started to do some really funky kind of metallics and all of that. So it's kind of it's evolved. But I still think that Paul Reed Smith and the business machine that sits behind PRS must have just gone, wow. We thought we'd sell a few of these, and we thought they'd be in demand, and it's John Mayer and all of that. But I reckon there are guys in PRS just going, ka-ching, this is brilliant. This is a moneymaker. This is absolutely working for us. So when we see the SE, which was naturally gonna come at some point, it's what PRS does. It's absolutely no surprise to me, the media storm around it, the press releases around it, the videos, all of that. One, because that's how you market these days effectively. It's social media is the key tool to do this. So you've got to develop all that collateral, and it's not about getting the write-up in the guitar magazines anymore. It's about, getting it into influencers' hands and getting the word out there and getting them raving about it. But moreover than that, these guys are going to want to shift the units and units of these, because I think this has taken PRS as a company to another level of exposure and top of mind awareness. And, they've always been a big player, but now this starts to put them into the kind of, Fender, Gibson kind of notoriety levels with the volumes that they're probably selling of these guitars and intend to sell. So I think they're like, yeah, absolutely, chuck the marketing budget at this wholeheartedly, because we are going to sell a boatload of these very easily.
Well, it's almost kind of, you can imagine it being the one guitar that they do in their entire range that basically pays for the running of the company, almost,
Right.
And it's incredible. I know what you mean about the Silver Sky when it first came out, the core model, the US model. I was underwhelmed. I remember seeing so many comments on social media of people saying, oh, so John Mayer left Fender to go to PRS and PRS have made him a Fender. There were so many disparaging comments about that guitar. And I think I may have partook in that slightly because, at face value, it was hard to really kind of take the differences in that guitar seriously against the Strat.
Exactly.
They Fender must be kicking themselves. I'm sure if Fender could go back 5 years and, because my understanding I'm sure nobody really knows the answer, but my understanding is that John Mayer wanted to have this relationship with Fender, and Fender, I don't think, were willing to have such an open conversation with John Mayer about the kind of guitars he wanted to play and wanted, his signature instrument to be, because obviously he had a Fender signature Strat.
He did. Beautiful guitar.
Which was a fantastic Strat. 60s style thing, Big Dipper pickups, I think were in, that kind of, it was almost like a modern SRV kind of thing he had going on. And he's still renowned for playing some of those Strats that he has, the black one and whatnot. So I think he'd already had a relationship with Paul Reed Smith around that point, because Paul Reed Smith was making him those Eagle guitars for.
Do you remember that? I was going to say this wasn't the first collaboration.
Not the first. No, exactly. Yeah,
that was a monstrosity. To be fair, no, it wasn't. It was literally the from a very stripped down vintage style SSS Strat to I'm going to go work with Paul Smith and create a guitar. And I think I think that guitar was predominantly used for the Grateful Dead gigs that he was doing. So it needed to have a bit more versatility and tonal options in it. But it reminded me of, yes, it looked PRS-esque, but it reminded me of when I was a kid and I used to draw like sports cars. But it would be like a sports car with like 17 machine guns on it and like a sirens and like fireworks popping out of it. It was just like a guitar taken to the extremes. It's just like, and it cost like 10 grand or something. Didn't it?
I think they did limited runs of those Modern Eagles you could buy, which were like £10,000 or something. And to be fair, Mayer's always played PRS guitars. His go-to's always been a Strat, but he's always played PRSs. If you go back to sometime around between Heavier Things and Continuum album time, so like around the time he was doing the trio stuff. Actually, it would have been before he did the trio, because he did a song with Herbie Hancock called Stitched Up on one of Herbie Hancock's records, and it would have been early to mid 2000s before he did the trio, because I think that's where he met Steve Jordan on the Herbie Hancock sessions. And Steve Jordan obviously went on to be in the trio. And that song that he did with Herbie Hancock, Stitched Up, is a really great track, funky kind of jazz thing. And he played, in the videos for the sessions, he's playing PRS guitars there.
Oh, cool.
So, I think he's played PRSs his whole career, but they've never been his core guitars. Yeah. So it's been really interesting to see that relationship build from a fracture in his relationship with Fender, it seems.
Right.
But anyway, so that's kind of the origin story of these guitars, right? I think I feel the same way about you as of these guitars. But shall we talk about the specs of the guitars? Right.
Absolutely.
Because there are some differences in these, obviously. I mean, there's about a $1,500 delta between these two ranges of guitars, right? Yeah. There's going to be a difference between them. And it's not actually that big a specification difference, is it? There's some key things which for me are worthy of discussion in terms of difference. But I think all in all, they're pretty similar guitars, right?
They are. And I think, you know what? I think actually, after my initial perhaps disappointment on maybe some of the color finishes, which we'll talk about as well, I think actually this is a pretty good incarnation of the Silver Sky, the SE. I think they've done pretty well. And look, they make no bones about what the SE range is. I mean, SE guitars from PRS are brilliant, right? They're used by people that want that PRS quality, because you still get it in the SE models for sure. But it's used by pro players as well. I mean, we've had pro guitarists on the podcast that use the SE guitar. Not the American core range. And that's because the SE guitars are really good guitars. We're not talking about a budget guitar, by the way. We're still talking about a guitar that retails, for $800 to $900, bucks. So it's still a fair wedge of cash. So the SE is designed to be more accessible, and by that we mean cheaper, which allows it to be more affordable for some people. But in order to do that on the SE versus the core range Silver Sky, I don't think they've made that many compromises. There are a few tweaks.
Well, I think what they've done is they've made the compromises in the right areas, haven't they? They've well, let's get straight to it. They've clearly made compromises in color choices, right?
Yeah, but why? Because that's not big compromise. There shouldn't be a compromise to be had there. It's a color.
Yeah, but I think it's leaving the door open to limited edition colors, right? Because put it this way, what is the core price? What is the price for a core US Silver Sky? It's about $2,500, right?
Right, exactly.
So for the limited edition colors that they did recently, so like those color flip,
the Nebula,
that's about $1,000 extra.
Is it? I didn't know there was a premium on that.
So there was a premium on those limited edition colors that they did.
Right.
So I wonder if they're leaving the door open here for limited edition colors on the SE as well. It maybe pushes it slightly over $1,000, but hey, you're getting something limited edition. I'm surprised they didn't do the pink. Do you know the pink guitar he's been playing
Roxy,
for about the last year?
The Roxy,
the thing that he's been playing as part of his Sob Rock album that has come out. I'm surprised they didn't do a pink version of that. That's the SE. So I'm really surprised. But actually, although I think there may be some sensible reasons why they've chosen the colours they did, they're pretty uninspiring.
They're ugly.
They are. The Dragon Fruit Red is probably the only one that feels interesting to me. But other than that, the classic white or the yellow one that they've done is probably the only one I would stomach. The other two colours you can get for me feel just a little bit flat, and it's kind of. It's a little bit disappointing. I feel a little bit disappointed in the colours.
I do massively. I was kind of like, no, I'm not going to get one of those. The colour doesn't do anything for me, right? So I wanted a Roxy pink one to feature in the range.
Yeah.
Like you, I wanted the tungsten or a grey version, some sort of grey.
Yeah, like a gunmetal version. Almost,
like a gunmetal, like to replicate the tungsten one that's pewter, in the core.
Maybe pewter, like the Clapton signature pewter that you can get. That's a fantastic colour, something like that.
A black one would have been great, and okay, maybe keep the. I would have kept the stone blue one, which isn't too bad. If I was pushed to buy one, it would probably be the stone blue. But I still don't think it's a particularly attractive colour. So yeah, I think they got the colours wrong. Really, they could have, and this wouldn't have affected price, right? A tint is a tint. I'm not asking them to make it nitrocellulose.
No,
it's just a different colour of poly urethane. So I'll be interested to see how successful they are with these colours, but they don't do anything for me.
That's what I mean. That has to be something to do with cost saving, because I know you're saying that it doesn't really change the cost, but to introduce new colours into a factory that's already producing guitars for PRS must have some kind of cost implication. And I wonder if they're using colours that are already available over there in Indonesia where they're making these guitars, right? So yeah, I'm slightly kind of disappointed in the colours, but I think they're leaving the door open for something else in the future. Because that's classic. Yeah. That's also very much a John Mayer thing. He's very much he did that with his Fender signature instruments. They had new colours and new designs. And I think when his Battle Studies album came out, there was a Battle Studies version of the signature Strat that you could get. So he's very much a product man, and I think he's going to continue to kind of influence that product. So maybe there'll be like a Generation 2 version of it that, that'll come out over the coming years as he releases new material, and the SE is going to be privy to those changes, those ideas that he has. I'm hoping, at least, because if it really is just those 4 colours for now, that's a little bit disappointing.
I'm sure you're right, Matt, because that is, again, marketing 101, and it's certainly what we've seen from the Core Silver Sky range. In fact, we've seen some other changes to the Core Silver Sky since the 2018 release in terms of slight tweaks to the pickups, in terms of sound, slight changes to the neck carve as well has evolved over time. So we've seen some more little changes other than colours to the Core Silver Sky range. So that probably won't happen with the SE. That'll stay in terms of the main specs of the guitar. But I dare say that the colours will continue to evolve and change, because it's colours come and go with fashion and other things, right? So all right, I think we've probably discussed the colours enough. It's a subjective thing. That's probably the most subjective thing, isn't it? I
think
mean,
so.
And arguably, is it the least important aspect of these guitars?
It entirely is. It definitely is the least important thing, because you can just close your eyes and imagine any other colour you want. What really matters is I guess the feel and the sound. Here I am interrupting this fascinating conversation about the new PRS SE Silver Sky. However, if you've listened this far, you should probably subscribe, follow, or like this podcast in your preferred podcast app. That way you never miss another show. You can even do that now while you listen to the show. I'll wait here while you do it. Done it? Okay, let's get back to it. But the last thing I wanted to just talk about in terms of specification difference.
Let's talk the specs for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, is the wood choice, in the body. So the original is the core line is older, and this one is a poplar body.
Yes.
It's a slightly different wood choice. Poplars, I think, are slightly lighter wood. So I guess there'll be questions asked about that. Why is there a different tone wood used? But I don't understand tone woods that well, and from the short amount of research I've done, poplar's still It's a cheaper choice for sure, but it's still a very good wood. I mean, from what I can understand, there's still some very high-end guitars that use poplar. Music Man, for example, apparently the Steve Morse signature guitar, which is a very, very high-end guitar, is a poplar body as well. So I guess it's just down to player preference. And one thing that I did realise after doing some research is obviously a lot of vintage Fender guitars used Swamp Ash and Alder for quite a long time.
They did.
So those woods are revered as being vintage instruments. But from what I understand, the reason for those choices is because Alder and Swamp Ash, they grow very quickly in swamplands and wetlands down in the south of the US in Mississippi. So originally when Fender were making these guitars, that was one of the cheapest woods they could get hold of because it was in abundance in in the deltas of the USA. So it wasn't particularly a tone wood choice from Leo Fender to choose something correct. It was cheap materials at the time.
It was, exactly.
Now it's not cheap. Now it's a scarce material. It's considered expensive tone wood.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I think if you're thinking, well, it's not Alder and I want the tone wood, you maybe just remember that Alder was never chosen as a tone wood in the first place when these instruments were starting to be made. It was a cheap material.
Correct.
And poplar is a cheaper material now. So maybe in 50 years' time, poplar will be considered a scarce tone wood. I don't know. But I think some people may mention the tone wood as something that's of great variation, but I don't think it's that important.
As well they should. It is a difference that will impart a slightly different character to the Strat. That switch that Fender made from Swamp Ash to Alder was based on availability. It was also based on weight. The Swamp Ash ones were quite heavy, so when they started to make that switch over to Alder in like the 50s, 60s guitars, players then liked the older ones because they felt they had still a nice tone to them, but they were lighter as well. I mean, you play some of those Swamp Ash ones, they're pretty heavy. Poplar's a good wood, but I mean, these guitars are made in different countries, right? So the core range are made in the US, the SEs are made out of a dedicated factory in Indonesia. And I've seen some beautiful Indonesian guitars in recent years where you just go, wow, the Court factory, as we've discussed before, and I'm sure the SE factory is a shoot off of the huge Court operation that sits out there in Indonesia. There's some great guitars being made out of Indonesia. So it's no surprise PRS are basing their Far Eastern manufacturing out there. So those are the differences. So maybe the tone wood choice is based on availability of woods in Indonesia, what's there, what's sitting on the palette, what they've already got use of. Poplar has been used for Strat, S-style guitars very successfully. It is slightly cheaper, but to be honest, Alder isn't particularly expensive. But it is a difference. So there you go. Maybe that is one of that. They've got to bring it in at a slightly better. They've got to bring it in at a better price point, and it's a very slight compromise to switch to poplar that I don't think will make a huge difference. It will make a small difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the other differences I think as well is just, I think it's mainly aesthetic, truss rod cover being slightly different. The fretboard has a different radius. Well, here's the sort of thing, right? So I was wondering whether or not part of the cost saving is, and this is purely speculation, right? I don't know if this is going to be true, but it's just a thought that occurred to my mind. So the truss rod cover is different. The nut is different. Not only is it a synthetic nut rather than a bone nut, which I think is acceptable, but it's an entirely different nut design. It's more like a Les Paul nut that sits butted up against the top of the fretboard wood itself, rather than slotted into the fretboard like a bone nut would be on a Strat, and how it is, so it's a slightly different nut design. And it has a different radius and it has a different finish. So it's a satin finish rather than a nitrocellulose finish that the core model has. Which makes me wonder whether or not part of the cost saving is they're using available neck designs and neck blanks that Court make in their factory already. So they're not retooling for anything new. And what they're really just doing is just recutting the headstock shape to meet what they need. So do you understand what I'm saying? So there's nothing, that's probably a neck that you might get on any other guitar from any other manufacturer or Court or whoever Court make for, and all they're doing is cutting the PRS shape into it, and that's one of the ways they're saving money. But I'm interested to get your thoughts on what the difference in the fretboard radius really means. to a player.
Sure. So all of those things that you've mentioned from a specifications difference are all going to drive down the manufacturing cost based on time. Because to slot a nut in a neck is much more exact and time consuming than to just butt it up against the top rather than having a slot. I mean, it may well be that, I mean, in those factories in Indonesia, they will be able to CNC necks, you know, to whatever spec they need. It may well be that these necks are, you know, coming off a run that supplies other guitars and other manufacturers. But I don't think it's too much of an issue for them just to do a slot in CNC versus just a cut off at the top so the nut butts up against it. Yeah. What is more time consuming, whether you're using synthetic bone or real bone, and that I think is, I don't know if that's a difference between the two of them. The SE is a synthetic.
The
SE
is a synthetic bone. It's not just a plastic. I think it's specified as a synthetic bone material. Yeah. So it's probably like what are they called? Plex, not Plex. That's a setup machine.
Tusk. Like a Tusk or a Graphtec type thing, or True Bone is another one. But to shape that and get it to shape nicely and slot into the nut slot really nicely, yes, you can do that by machine potentially, but there's an element of hand finishing that will need to be done as well to make sure that fits really nicely into the slot. And so that's just time. It's just, I mean, it's just so much easier. Yeah. Which is cost, right? So that makes perfect sense to me as to why the nut sits differently in the neck on those. It's just a pure artifact of being a volume, being able to, how many can you produce in an hour doing it one way versus the other? So that makes sense. The nitro difference versus poly, that again is a manufacturing expense. So nitrocellulose needs to be applied. Nice thin layers. It's a more time consuming process. There's an art to nitrocellulose finishing.
More volatile material as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And polyurethane, much more durable, easy to apply on there, easy to then buff and finish. It affects the whole process. There's no way they would put a nitrocellulose on an SE. It's just not cost effective to do so. So that again, that's an easier explanation. The fretboard radius one, this one annoys me a little bit.
Really?
Right? Yeah. So. All right, because right, so let me tell you why it annoys me. Right, so when the Silver Sky came out, it had a somewhat controversial 7.25 inch radius on it.
Why is that controversial?
Well,
because that's uber vintage.
It's uber vintage, right? Yeah. So it's not controversial from that perspective because Mayer quite likes the old vintage Strat vibe thing, but it's quite controversial because the generalization and general kind of accepted wisdom in inverted commas is that curvature on a Strat or indeed any guitar is going to make it more difficult to lower the action and get a really nice low action without fret buzz going on because it's an exaggerated or it's a vintage style curve versus what all modern Strats have, which is like a 9.5 inch radius, all the way up to kind of like a Les Paul or radius which is like flatter at like a 12, and then you get into kind of Ibanez's which have like a 14. All of these are becoming flatter and flatter and flatter, and the benefit of that is you can drop the action and get a really nice smoother playing fast neck on it. So for most players you go, a 7.25, okay, that's going to be more tricky to set up and get a nice low playing action. And intuitively it would have been, because the Silver Sky was always supposed to be a vintage vibe, but with modern appointments to it, right? With certain modern like tweaks to it. So I would have thought they would have gone for a 9.5 radius, but anyway, they didn't. They went for 7.25, and Paul Reed Smith himself was very keen to point out that people telling you can't get a really nice low action on a 7.25 and it will choke out, but we here at PRS, we know how to do our fret work, we know how to properly set up a guitar, and we have made the Silver Sky play beautifully low. We have spent the time on the fret work to ensure that it gives you the comfort and vintage feel, but you can get a super low, fast playing neck on it. And I bought into all of that and went, cool, nice. Good job, guys. That's it. That's awesome, right?
Okay.
So with that in mind, you then go to the Silver Sky SE, and one of the first things I was like, have they kept the 7.25?
Oh, really? So that was a big thing on your list of...
Yeah, for sure. Because, again, it means as a manufacturing efficiency, it would have been very easy for them to go, no, we're going to go for a 9.5 on this one. And it's just easier because it's less time intensive to get the fretwork right, to get the action load, to get it playing right, blah, blah, blah. But they've gone for what is it, an 8? Is it
8.5? So
8.5.
Not massively different.
It's not massively different. It's kind of halfway between a vintage and a modern.
Yeah.
So you kind of go, wow, they really have looked at all of the different angles just to save cost here. And I'm probably in the right way, I guess. I don't know. So it's still going to have a vintagey feel to it because it's not quite the modern radius, but it means they've had to spend, this is the bit that worries me, is they've had to spend less time and attention on the fretwork to get this to play as well. So I'd be interested to see what the fretwork and finish is like on these SE guitars. But yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame they didn't keep with that original ethos of we've got a really vintage feel neck here, but we've set it up and we put the attention into the fretwork to make it play nice and low.
Okay. That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that because I've been trying to rack my brains about why that difference. I mean, I've got it in my notes here. Is the fretboard radius difference important? I don't know the answer to that question because I guess it's a matter of taste, but the point of these guitars is one of them is meant to be a more accessible version to the other. So which differences make it a different guitar? What things make it less of a representation of the real guitar? And I don't know if fretboard radius is important, but one of the things that occurs to me is you said Paul Reed Smith said about the core guitar, don't worry about the radius. We know how to do our fretwork and set things up correctly. Do you think that they're making some kind of, rightly or wrongly, some kind of assumption that because these guitars are more accessible, they're going to end up in the hands of people that won't maintain them as well?
Possibly.
And therefore, they're easier then to keep a better playing experience over time if the fretboard radius is slightly flatter. I'm speculating, but I
see. This is why I love talking to you, because you're just an all-round decent human being that believes a big corporate company gives a damn about what happens to that guitar once it's left their shop and is in the hands of the punter whose cash they've taken. My cold-hearted, cynical corporate mind goes, basically, just make it 8.5. It will still feel roughly like a vintage vibe, so that people won't complain too much and go, well, it doesn't feel anything like a core Silver Sky. But what it will mean is we don't have to pay as much attention in Indonesia to the quality of the fretwork and the setup, because the guys in Indonesia, again, will be able to get the job done quicker when they're making it. They won't have to agonize on the setup in the same way that the guys in the US factories will have to do. The guy in my local guitar shop told me that a lot of SE guitars in their kind of life cycle actually go from Indonesia to US for a quality control check before they're then shipped worldwide for distribution.
Yeah, I'd heard that too.
Which then plays more to your humanitarian theory that actually, it's not all about just chucking these through as quickly as you can and getting them out there and making the job easier for the guys in Indonesia, because that shows a level of due diligence and care, doesn't it? That they get most of it made in Indonesia because it's cheaper and what have you. But then they still won't let it go out of the door without the proper US quality control check on it. So, who knows? But going to the point that you said, which is which of the specs will make the bigger difference, I think that's one that they should have kept the same.
You think? Okay.
I think they should have gone, no, we made a bold decision to go for a 7.25 on the Silver Sky. That is one of the core things that we should keep.
Yeah, and I think you're right in saying logic would suggest that 9.5 was the next kind of radius that is kind of standard to go for. It just seemed to me like 8.5 is them trying to find a compromise between the original and what is cost effective to produce.
That's exactly it.
And we can't, it can't lose sight of the fact that this is built to a price. It clearly is built to a price whilst trying to maintain the best parts of the experience of the main guitar. And I think that's what we have to talk about next, right? I've watched some of the reviews of this guitar, and I'm sure you have too. And regardless of the differences in spec, the overall feeling I'm getting is that these guitars sound the same, right? Have you seen Murray Spender's review?
I haven't. I watched one on Anderton's where the guys felt that there was a difference, or at least actually the people writing in the comment section felt there was a difference between the two, but not a bad difference, just a difference. But what was Mary Spender's video?
So her video is she's playing a tune side by side. So she's got this. She's done it perfectly. Credit to her, because this is exactly how I would want to listen and see a comparison between the core guitar and the SE.
Yeah.
So she's playing a song and she's splitting, the song as she's playing, it's going from left to right, SE, core line guitar. There's no moments of change between the two guitars, like now listen to this or anything like that. She's just obviously recorded a track of just the guitar on both guitars, and what she's doing is she's mixing one in and one out. And I honestly, I cannot hear a difference. I can't hear a difference between the two guitars.
Cool.
They've got more or less the same pickups, right? They're not exactly the same pickups. One of them is the JM65 something, and the other one is the JM65 something S, in the SE. So there's obviously a slight difference. But, you got to give praise to PRS here and say you've clearly hit the nail on the head in what you were trying to do. You've made a guitar that looks like the core line model. It probably doesn't feel exactly like it, but actually, credit to Murray Spender again. She said she preferred the feel of the SE compared to her £3,500
which she
Nebula,
does have,
core Silver Sky. She actually said, "Do you know what? I prefer the neck on the SE. It feels better." Personal preference, obviously. Some people will prefer the more expensive one. I would prefer the more expensive one because I'd paid my money for it. If I spent £3,500 on a guitar, I would prefer it. But I can understand her point. But the thing as well, I thought is, why is it that so many people say these sound the same? And I kind of thought, is it because the people involved in the development of these guitars, like Paul Reed Smith and John Mayer, these are people with long and varied experience playing high-end vintage and new and modern guitars. Are they privy to hearing things, and feeling things in detail that we just aren't? And do you think that they have experienced a difference in these guitars that most people won't? Are they aware of that? I feel that's quite an abstract question to ask, but it was a thought I had. I was kind of like, a PRS proving a point that they didn't intend to, almost, which is that they can produce something almost as good as what they do in the US elsewhere in the world for a lot less money. Are there going to be people going out trying these SE guitars who own the core model going, I can't tell the difference. It worries me that I can't tell the difference here between these two guitars. Have PRS made the experience too close between the SE? Do you know, I think that's the question I'm asking. Are they too close?
No. That's a really juicy question. See, I look at it slightly differently, and I go, okay, you've come clean. You've come clean with the SE. It's a more honest presentation of what the John Mayer signature should be. Because $2,500 for a factory produced, non-custom shop, albeit PRS quality instrument, is too much money. It's a Strat. It's a bolt-on neck Strat.
Yeah.
And guess what? The SE, made out of the Indonesian factory where they make some really nice guitars, lo and behold, has under PRS license, obviously, and John Mayer influence, created a much more affordable, what is it? A third of the price of the actual Silver Sky, and lo and behold, it sounds nearly identical, if not identical. Well, that just goes to show you that it's you're paying for the name and the PR around the US version Silver Sky, because at the end of the day, it's just a bolt-on Strat with his kind of custom wound pickups in it, which affect, is going to affect the tone. But the pickups on the SE are reverse engineered in Indonesia from the John Mayer ones on his core guitar, which are wound in the US by PRS. So all they've done is basically gone, well, here's our US pickup that we make and hand wind ourselves. Here's the John Mayer ones. In the Indonesian factory, they've just taken them apart and built them exactly in the same way, but with the Indonesian materials. So lo and behold, it sounds exactly the same. So, and then they charge $800, $900 for it. For me, apart from the colors, if I was to buy a Silver Sky, I've changed my mind. It wouldn't be the US version because I don't think it's worth the money. I think the SE is, once they've sorted the colors out, it's every bit as good a guitar.
And I've said in the past that I did think the Silver Sky was worth the money because of the superlative, quality control of PRS. I mean, I don't think anybody does quality control from a large scale manufacturer point of view than PRS does. That's the thing that they've prized themselves on more than anything. That's the thing that they say has got them where they are, is that they have to, you can't compete in terms of design in some ways with the companies. You have to compete in terms of quality. So I've always kind of held, well, it must be just a better quality instrument. I think, like I said, I think they're proving something maybe they didn't intend to prove, which is there's less value in the core line guitars than maybe people thought there was. But I also think what should be said is I hope people take Far Eastern manufacture of guitars on the whole, especially from people like Court and such. I think they should be taken more seriously than they have been. I think they make guitars that are worthy of being, stood up against US and Japanese manufacture now. I think it's clear they're proving a point now. Court are proving a point for that part of the world that says, hey, we can do it with the big boys. You don't have to come to us now to manufacture your cheaper guitars. We can do good stuff. We should be taken more seriously. I think this proves a point for Far Eastern guitars more than it does for anything else. The last thing I wanted to talk about is alternatives, right? We've spoken mostly now about when we said at the beginning, who's this for? And we said people who can't afford the full fat Silver Sky, right? We also said it's also people who are on the market for a good quality sub $1,000 Strat type guitar. Okay. And actually, I think the alternatives in the same price range stand up pretty well against this guitar. I did think originally this is going to be the best Strat style guitar on the market at around $1,000 now. Just you watch, kind of. That was my first response. Yeah. And after looking at what's on the market, I'm not so sure. I still think there's better guitars. I still think there's better guitars for the same money. And in particularly from Fender. Looking around online, the Player Plus, the Fender Player Plus Strat is pretty much the same price, about $850 at £850, something like that. And that is a well-spec'd guitar. It's not made in the US. It's still made, in Mexico, I think, because if it's a Player Strat, I think they're Mexican of origin. But you're talking an older body, 12-inch, more modern fingerboard radius, noiseless Fender pickups. It's got some advanced switching options as well, push-pull pot, which will add the net pickup to, your other pickup positions so you can get some more telly-style tones. It's got locking tuners, which was another spec difference between the SE and the full fat Silver Sky, right? No locking tuners on the SE. It's got a modern 2-point trem system. It comes with a gig bag. So for £850, you're getting a really good Strat, something I think stands up well. But more importantly, it has some superb colours, really, really great colours. I don't know if you've seen them. You can get those kind of actually almost like a PRS style fade, where it'll go from like a dark blue to light blue. I've seen same with like orange to yellow. They've got some really interesting colours. So I would say if you're disappointed in the colours of these SE Silver Sky guitars, have a look at the Fender Player Plus range of guitars, because they've got some really cool colours and effectively similar kind of guitar, right? You can get maple and rosewood neck versions of those. But what about you? If you were looking at this, if you were going to spend about $1,000 just under on a Strat style guitar, and you wanted an alternative to that SE Silver Sky, what would you look at?
I'd look at the guitar that the SE was actually originally based on, which is a Fender Strat.
Because that's what it is, right?
Because that's what it is,
that's what
right?
It is.
I mean, this debate, this argument. I was doing the same as you, mate, and which I was looking at alternatives and trying to weigh up how much guitar you get for your money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you do that comparison, with the original core line Silver Sky, and you go $2,500, that's like Fender custom shop money, or maybe just short of Fender custom shop money. But if you look at what you're getting in the guitar as a Silver Sky, if you take John Mayer's name off of it for a moment, and also remove from the fact that you might be a massive PRS fanboy, right? Put those things in a box and you just go, okay, how much guitar am I getting for my money? Basically, you go and get a Fender American Deluxe or Ultra Strat, and you can buy 2 of those for the cost of one Silver Sky. Okay, and you are therefore, if you want to go and get a US made American Strat, you can basically buy 2 of them for the same price of a Silver Sky. So and you're not compromising on any of the appointments, any of the sound, any of the playability, any of the setup. It's just PRS as a manufacturer with John Mayer's endorsement are selling this guitar at this price, which is quite a big premium to the alternative from Fender. So then you do that with the SE, and as we've done, and go, well, would I spend my $900 on the SE versus another Fender? And you go, exactly to your point, mate. You can get more guitar for your money by going to Fender.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that. So I think we have to just accept on face value that the PRS Silver Skies, be it in core model form or SE in form, do not represent the best value for money if you are looking for a guitar. Does that mean those guitars aren't good, or that they're not cool, or that they're not desirable? Absolutely not. They're flying off the shelves, right? So pick your guitar and go for it, and spend your money as your heart dictates. But I don't know. I kind of gave up on the battle of trying to compare and contrast and offer people better value for money, because I think it's glaring. I think it's glaringly obvious that these guitars don't represent the best value for money. So it then begs the question that you raise, which is, who are they for?
Yeah, it's for these guitars are for John Mayer fans.
There you go.
They're for John Mayer fans. They're for John Mayer fans, and I think people may look at them and find them as a guitar that speaks to them, whether they're John Mayer fans or not. But I think for the most part, if you are if you're on the market for a guitar now at that money, and you want a Strat style guitar, you're probably going to find you are going to find better value in a Strat, in a Fender, Origin guitar. I think part of the problem here as well is you don't have. I think PRS probably wanted to sell the SE for more than they're selling it for.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think because $850 is around the same price point as some of the normal non-signature SE guitars. You don't have to spend.
But they're beautiful though.
Yeah, they're stunning. Absolutely stunning. But that's a core SE guitar. Yeah. Now you've got John Mayer's name on it. They could have gone $1,000. I think they could have sold it around $1,000, $1,100, and they could have said we're about half the price of the US model, but
still less than half. Yeah,
exactly. The problem is now they're more expensive than the Fender non-US Origin guitars, and they're very close to the Fender US Origin guitars. So then you really struggle with the value proposition of, should I buy a US Origin Fender or a non-US Origin PRS that isn't the full fat version? Some people will even quite disparagingly and wrongly say, well, it's PRS's Squire. Why would you buy that? Why would you spend that much money on it? So I think there was a ceiling. There was always a ceiling on how much PRS could charge for a non-US Origin Strat style guitar.
Your logic is really sound, mate.
Yeah,
really sound.
I hope. Thank you. I think that's part of the problem, right? Is they're selling it for as much as they can sell it. The market dictates the price, right? You can only dictate your cost, and I think the market dictates that they can't really sell these guitars for more than they are. The fact that they've managed to pack so much in at that price is great, but again, it really does leave the buyer with, well, I have to be a massive John Mayer fanboy or girl, to want to get that guitar, because at that money, there really is too much on the market other than that guitar that is better value.
See, I agree with you. I still think it's too much money for what it is. And is that snobby because it's made in Indonesia? Yeah, probably. But it is because I found some US made Strats in the January sale going for the same price, £800-900. But if we look at recommended retail price, spend £200 more and you could get a US made Strat. So, we're not talking about too much more money. So I think the people that are then having to make that decision will still be John Mayer fans, where they go, no, it's worth it because I'm a John Mayer fan. Yeah. Because if you then compare it to what else is in PRS's library at that price, the PRS SE Paul's guitar, right? That's the same price. Mm-hmm. Or even the SE Custom 22s, 24s. They're beautiful looking guitars.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's veneers and all of that, but they're stunning looking guitars with the same quality. But if you were to hold up a PRS Silver Sky SE and a Paul's guitar to a layperson and say, tell me which one of these guitars you think costs more, 10 out of 10 people would say the Paul's guitar.
Of course.
It just looks like a beautiful guitar.
Yeah,
it looks more expensive. So I still think they've gone in too high. But I think the justification is that the John Mayer fans will still buy it. It's still a third of the price of the real Silver Sky, but I still think it doesn't warrant being as expensive as a Paul's guitar or an SE Custom 24 based on the next alternative from another supplier and indeed stuff in their own SE range. I don't know. What am I saying? Do I like it or do I not?
Well, this is the thing, right? It's hard because it's some people are going to love it. I think inadvertently PRS have maybe devalued the bolt-on range of guitars slightly. Not the bolt-on range. I think they've devalued the Silver Sky Core model slightly. But I think some people will think, well, what am I paying for when I go for the $2,000 version, $2,500 version? If I can get what people are saying is not just ballpark, but the sound of that guitar with a slightly different feel and origin for, a third of the price, more or less. It is a third of the price, pretty much. So I think they've inadvertently devalued their Silver Sky, maybe. They probably won't experience that because I'm sure the market, people still buy what they want to buy. They still covet things that really, if people are going out there and still spending $5,000 on Murphy Lab guitars, then people don't really care about inherent value. They care about what they covet and love and what they really desire, right? So I don't think that side of the market's affected. This guitar is going to be bought, I think, 90% of the time by people who are huge John Mayer fans, or at least really, really love that sound that he has and can't just access the full fat USA model. That's what it's going to be bought by. And I think 10% of people that buy it are going to buy it because, well, they see it as another, valid option in their arsenal of guitars. And I think, not the more intelligent buyer, because that's an insulting thing to say, but I think the more kind of somebody who's maybe approaching buying a guitar with a more less, a more dispassionate mindset about wanting to buy a tool, an instrument that is a tool for them, something that they need in their arsenal, and they have a set budget and they're open to all considerations. I don't think it's going to be something that people are going to see as a worthy buy. I think they're going to find value in other instruments from Fender, maybe even other people doing great guitars like Reverend doing some fantastic guitars in that range as well that are similar. G&L, you can get US origin G&L Strat style guitars at that price range as well. And G&L is practically Fender. It's George Fullerton and Leo Fender started that company, long after they left Fender. So I think we've discussed it.
I don't know where we came out though in terms of, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Do we like it? Do we not like it? I think once these arrive in guitar shops finally here in the UK, we'll go and try it and see what we like of it. But I still think it's a cool guitar, and I still think it's a lot cheaper than the core version. So for people that are after a Silver Sky in a more accessible way and want to play slow dancing in a burning room without having to raid their entirety of their savings, then there you go.
I think it's best. I think it's all positive for us, right? For people on the buyer side of the counter in the music shop. I think it's all positive for us. I think PRS have done a fantastic thing. I think John Mayer has done a fantastic thing in making what is his signature guitar more accessible. But I think your point about it, about still being a Strat, why is it a Strat and it's so expensive, the core line model? I think it raises a few more questions about that still.
Still does to me.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Anyway, it feels so good to have that conversation.
Did a whole episode on one guitar.
Yeah, I know. We've been chatting about this on text for all week, little things. Let's talk about it on the podcast. I've been waiting for this conversation. It's been brilliant.
Yeah. The irony being that, we're discussing the PR machinery that's gone behind this and, what that all means. And yet we have dedicated an entire Guitar Smarts podcast episode to the Silver Sky SE. So, we are part of the inherent problem.
Yeah, we are. But I mean, I'd love to play one. I'm going to leave it there. I think the only other thing for us to do is to go to a guitar store, which we desperately need to do sometime soon, mate. We need to go to a guitar store.
I'm ready and waiting. What are you doing this afternoon? Let's go. I'm eating Guitar Village this afternoon.
When they're in stock at Guitar Village, let's meet up there and we'll go and play some and have a chat about them.
Good stuff. All right, buddy. Lovely to speak to you today.
Yeah, you too, mate. Have a cracking weekend. Take care of yourself. Looking forward to having another catch up next week. Speak soon.
Speak soon, buddy. Take it easy.
All the best, mate. Ta-da.
Thanks so much for joining us this week on the Guitar Smarts podcast. I imagine we've probably split the room on what people think about this new guitar from PRS, but we are really interested to hear about what you think about it. Let us know in our social media pages on either Instagram or Facebook. We'd love to know what the consensus is on this guitar. Check out the links in our description. You can find our social media pages, merch, store, and much more there. It's well worth a look. Anyway, until the next episode, have a great week. See you soon.